Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Team Training Tuesday. You are all most welcome to the third in the series of From Boys to Men. Part one was before conception and up to a certain age. I think we mentioned that time, conception and early childhood. Then part two, we went all the way up to adult, from the adolescent. And now part three, we want to talk about the adults, the actual adults. And I've invited a man, my best friend, my husband, and partner in the business and in life, to share his experiences with you and his, what I like to call words of wisdom. His name is Dr. Edward Nambasi. He's very, very passionate about what he does as a doctor, basically because it sets the stage for that individual who comes to the world. He's in obstetrics and he deals a lot with pregnancies and everything surrounding pregnancies, including counseling some men as well. So I thought he would be the perfect person to talk to us this evening. And he's going to present what we like to do here in this family. To all the guests, all the visitors, you are most welcome. I hope you learn something and also resolve to join us in the family that we are a part of. So, Dr. Edward Nambasi, please, the floor is yours. You are welcome to share.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this third part. It gives me great pleasure to be talking to you. And I must say, my partner and better half has done a brilliant job of doing part one and part two. So it's what they call a tough act to follow. I'll see if I can fill those big boots that she said. I've labeled mine From Boys to Men Part 3, Adulting. Adulting is a little joke that we have with some of my children when they reach the age when they're supposed to start paying their own bills. And then they talk about not liking adulting at all. As my dear wife has introduced me, I've been in the obstetric field for quite a long time, and I love what I do. But then, since we started Neolife, there's been a huge change and shift in my mind as to how I do what I do, because I've continued to gain from the energy that I get when I use the products, and I've continued to understand more and more about nutrition, which unfortunately, when I was a medical student many years ago, was a sum total of about 3 lectures in a 5-year course. So we're not taught very much, and we've learned a lot more during the business and Neolife in particular. There we go. Just to recap a bit from the first 2 sessions that have been done, we've seen that health begins before conception. Now, that means that the healthier the couple are, the better the pregnancy outcome. And the more likely that the ladies to get pregnant and therefore avoid all the complications that can happen in pregnancy. I'll put as the second point there is that the male gender is already at a disadvantage. You may or may not know this, but a lot of the pregnancies that do not continue to term and therefore not born consist disproportionately more of boys than girls. And even at birth, if there's any complications at all, then the baby girls tend to do a lot better than boys. So as you can see, we're at a disadvantage from the word go. but that shouldn't stop us. And then the other thing that we picked up from the first two sessions is that children, because they are so vibrant, in fact, literally bouncing off the walls, there's this myth that they don't need supplements, but in actual fact, they do need them more than even more mature people, because their needs at that stage are quite a lot. And then finally, what I picked up from the first two was that teenagers and young adults are increasingly not very well prepared for adult life. I know that we try our best as parents to equip them, and sometimes if we belong to a church, the church background also helps a lot to improve their preparedness for the world. But to be fair, there is nothing that can prepare a child adequately for adult life, except to grow up, become an adult, and actually start living life. And that's when you learn all about adulting. I'd like to start my talk with a bit of a disclaimer right at the beginning. This is not going to be a comprehensive talk about all the diseases that might afflict men, and it's certainly not a prescription for treating illnesses. So I just want to get those out of the way, and to remember that as distributors of Neolife, we're actually not looking for sick people to treat. We are looking for people who are trying to improve their health, who want to maintain their health, and therefore avoid becoming ill. That's our main target. However, because of the good quality of our supplements, everybody who uses them benefits. Even somebody who's got a health challenge will benefit from them. So as I keep saying every time, do not attempt to treat illnesses. I leave that to the people who are paid to do that and who are trained to do that. Rather, we concentrate on looking for the well people who would like to remain well. However, if there is somebody who is unwell already, who's got a challenge, our products will benefit them, but that's not the primary target that we're looking for. Okay, now that you're a man, this is our young gentleman who has now become an adult in the real sense. He's finished his education, or whichever education that was, whether it is secondary or tertiary. He now gets a job and starts a career or starts his own business. And with that come the other things that afflict adults, and that is relationships. These can be either relationships with members of the opposite sex, relationships with your own family, work colleagues, friends, etc. Then you might want to start a family. Again, something that's a huge step. All these things that I've mentioned present very unique challenges, which require the person to make choices. Now, choices can either be wise choices, not so wise choices, good choices, bad choices, but choices nevertheless. And whatever choices are made, they have consequences. And what are those consequences? The biggest one is that they are stressful things to choose. Blessed are those who have found peace in the Lord and therefore are happy with whatever they come up with, and find that place where they can be calm about whatever life throws at them. But the majority will have stress. And with stress, health challenges will follow. And that's where we are basing our talk today, how to avoid getting to that stage where health challenges become part of you. The background, usually between the ages of 20 and 40, is the best time to start making good health choices. But sadly, because this is when somebody is really energetic, this is when the career is being made, people are trying to reach the top of the ladder, trying to set life up. You've got a mortgage, you've got a car, you're trying to, if you're in business, trying to build a business so that it's sustainable, and you're on the run most of the time. So what happens? You grab the quickest bite you can get so that you eat on the go. Number one, you're not settled. Number two, you're eating the wrong kinds of foods, what we call fast food. And this, of course, doesn't lay a good foundation for health afterwards. Then the other thing I need to point out is that we socialize our children, male children, to be tough. I'm sure all of you have heard that saying, oh, big boys don't cry, suck it in, you get better. And we expected not to show any pain or emotions for that matter. The net result of this is that we tend to sit on things that would have otherwise caused somebody else to seek attention early, and therefore our challenges tend to get diagnosed late with complications. I'm talking about this group which is supposed to be energetic and doing the right things, but as I say, unfortunately, because they also undergo, they usually don't. Now, over the last few years, continuing with the background, there's been an increase in what we call lifestyle diseases, non-communicable diseases, for example, high blood pressure, diabetes, and obesity. These have increased over the last about 40 years or so. We're seeing many more, those of us who've been in the field for a long time. By the way, I forgot to mention that I've been at it for more than 40 years now. So when I started, we didn't see as many as we do now, and certainly not in the younger age group. The other thing that have increased as well is that abbreviation ED, which is erectile dysfunction, and infertility. They have also increased over these last few years. And then as men grow older, the prostate, which was a friend of theirs when they were younger, now begins to face challenges, and conditions like benign prostatic hypertrophy and cancers begin to creep in. And then, of course, the brain is not what it used to be, and that's when the dementias start setting in as well. Now, what I'm going to do is, because we've had many talks on health done by my dear wife and over the past, I'm not going to go into details of all the diseases, but I'll pick up a couple which I think are not given enough mileage in other places, and I'll dwell on those a little bit. What are the chronic lifestyle diseases? Cardiovascular diseases, this encompasses things like, as I mentioned, hypertension, blood pressure, things like heart diseases, and when strokes occur, that is in the cardiovascular system. Chronic respiratory diseases, we're seeing a lot more asthma and chronic obstructive airways disease, as it's called. Then diabetes mellitus, which has been talked on several times on this forum. And then, of course, the cancers and the neurological, as I mentioned, dementias and Alzheimer's, for example. What are the causes of these health challenges? Mainly, as I mentioned earlier on, from poor lifestyle choices. And poor lifestyle choices sometimes are not something that a person can avoid because of the high pressure life that we lead. And then, of course, the convenience, as I've already alluded to, the fast foods due to the fast-paced life that we have, leads to dietary deficiencies. Not only deficiencies in essential nutrients, but also introducing toxins from the kinds of oils that are used and the kinds of packaging materials that are used for these foods. And then, of course, the conveniences of life, like driving to work, working on the top floor and using the lift rather than the steps, sitting for long periods of time, all leading to lack of exercise. This can pose a challenge to one's health. And then, of course, apart from the last few years, which saw lockdown and more people working at home, there is generally an increase in exposure to household toxins. It's another subject that we've dealt with on this forum before, in that one of the most toxic places in the house is the kitchen, actually. And then the increasing reliance on technology, and technology in the form of your gadgets, the cell phones, what we're doing right now on the Zoom calls. And most of these have got what they call a blue light, which tends to disturb your sleep cycle, and therefore you don't get enough rest. This is probably mediated via the pineal gland, which is in your brain, the one that sort of controls the diurnal rhythm. Diurnal meaning during the day you're active walking around, and you're supposed to switch the next 12 hours to resting, giving the body a chance to catch up and recuperate. And then, of course, diet is a big thing. I like this slide, although it's a bit dated. We are seeing what WHO and CDC predicted. This was done, I think, in the early 2000s, that by 2020, 3 out of 4 deaths would be caused by chronic lifestyle or lifestyle-related diseases, which I've just mentioned too. The effects of a standard North American diet. The standard North American diet is actually no longer North American, but it's everywhere you go. Wherever there's any modicum of development, you'll note that the first companies that go into any country are Coca-Cola and McDonald's. So we've caught up with Americans in a big way. In fact, where we live now in South Africa, obesity is becoming fast a problem on the medical scene. In fact, we're probably competing with the US and giving them a run for their money as far as obesity scores are concerned. And then we talk about what causes the health challenges. Inflammation is at the root of it all. And it pairs up with its evil twin, which is called oxidation. And between the two of them, inflammation and oxidation, they are responsible for most of the ill health that we have. And inflammation, a lot of the foods that we eat, and I mentioned the fast foods, the oils that are used, actually are quite inflammatory. Oxidation, the very water that we drink. In fact, before I even go to the water, oxygen that you breathe, which is the very essence of life, is the most powerful oxidant in the world. And now if you combine the two, inflammation and oxidation, you can see why ill health becomes a challenge and why we need to do something about it. So let me touch on the two that I mentioned earlier on that I was going to elaborate on. Prostate disorders. It starts with prostatitis, which is an acute or chronic infection of the prostate gland. And this is characterized by pain, which somebody feels when they are passing urine. Or sometimes when you are squatting, you can feel that something is not quite right between your legs. This then can continue, and eventually the prostate becomes enlarged, which you call benign prostatic hypertrophy, which is causes then issues of what I call the stream of your urine. You know, when kids are young and they're standing in a row, the boys compete to see who will aim his jet farthest. But as you grow older, that stream comes nearer and nearer to you, and eventually you will reach an age where you have to be careful, otherwise your shoes will get wet. This usually doesn't have any pain. And then cancers may come as a result of what I've mentioned above. If prostatitis is chronically there, it can lead to malignancies, and then the hypertrophy also eventually. Black men are more at risk of cancer of the prostate, and it's recommended that if you're over the age of 40, please start screening. The screening sometimes is not so palatable for men because it may involve a rectal examination, which is a small discomfort to be reassured. Remember that if the cancers are caught early, they're actually treatable if they're detected early. The other challenge, which is quite a problem as the men advance a bit in years, and now we're seeing it in younger and younger people, is erectile dysfunction. It's got multiple causes, and bluntly put, it's what happens when somebody cannot perform their conjugal duties, and it can be quite distressing. Stress per se, and I already mentioned that stress is one of the biggest problems as people start their adult life, can cause erectile dysfunction. And then this becomes a vicious cycle because the more somebody attempts to perform, the more stressed they become and the less effective they are. And then, of course, there's hormonal imbalances. Again, Mawaf has done a very good talk on what happens with the xenoestrogens that we pick up from a bad diet and from the environmental toxins that we have, causing a disbalance between estrogen and testosterone in men. So what the net result of this is that we see a lot of men with what we call gynecomastia, and that is literally growing boobs and a figure that is more feminine than masculine. Then, of course, the other challenge is vascular issues. For example, somebody who's got diabetes mellitus will have a challenge with erectile dysfunction. Hypertension and its treatment can also cause a problem in that some of the treatments that are used to treat hypertension actually cause problems with the erectile function. So I say all this just to say, stitching time saves 9. So in everything that we do, prevention is better than cure. Regular checks to help pick up challenges early, and then of course to have a balance in life. All things are to be done in moderation. I know, for example, I might tread on some toes if I say that in some countries, a glass of wine, red wine, for example, taken occasionally, has been shown to have beneficial effects. But for those of us who are teetotalers, flavonoid complex will do the same thing. And then moderation, I'm talking about, for example, eating bread and other carbohydrates. They must be done in moderation, otherwise you'll be taxing your pancreas. And of course, things like red meat, etc. In everything, this is a diagram that we love to show every time we talk. A balance in life is essential, because if you are not balanced in all these areas, you're going to end up having a challenge in that if one, for example, you are very physical and you improve your physical energy extremely, but then at the detriment of other things, like you don't have spiritual joy, etc. Your mental is also compromised. Then you have an unbalanced will, and you know what an unbalanced will is like. It won't be able to take you very far. So that's why it's important that we take care of all these areas of our life. And the lifestyle modifications that can help you to achieve health is, number one, stop smoking if you smoke. If you are drinking, again, as I mentioned earlier on, a glass of red wine occasionally will not do you any harm. But beer every day with the boys at the pub might not be the best idea, because then it will be a drain on your pocket, but also a drain on your health. Eating a healthy and balanced diet is a no-brainer, because no matter how well you supplement, you cannot supplement away a bad diet. And once the damage is done, it might take you a long time to get to grips with it. Reduction of weight. Most of you have heard about the body mass index, the BMI, and that is simply taking your weight in kilograms and dividing it by your height in meters squared. Meters like 1 point something, 1.7, 1 point whatever squared, and that gives you an idea. If your BMI is less than 18, you're perhaps a little bit too small. If it's more than 26, look out, you're getting over. And if it's over 30, then you really need to do something to bring it down back to under 26. Exercise, ideal. And I don't mean doing the same routine as a 100-meter dash runner or the Comrades Marathon that has just finished now, but rather reasonable exercise. If you can walk. If you can take steps instead of the lift, do that. Gardening, doing some house chores. And so long as it is done regularly, that's the main thing, consistency. And then management of stress. I know this is a tall order in this hard, fast-paced world that we're in, but one is got to find peace. And I cannot say enough about our faith, whichever religion you belong to, but finding faith in the Lord and coming to peace with what life is throwing at you. And supplements with good quality whole food supplements. I'm going to tell you just now which company does that best. But before I do that, I'd like to introduce you to my 6 colleagues, the 6 best doctors in the world. The first one is fresh air. The next one is exercise. The next one is water, rest, healthy food, and the sun. 3 of these are, in fact, most of these are very cheap. That is free of charge, except in some climates. That is free of charge, you get it every day. That should be free of charge, so should that be. These 2 are a little bit more difficult because to get a good supply of water, like the municipal water supply with chlorine, might actually have oxidizing effects. If you can filter that out, it would help. The more difficult one is healthy food, because you have to be intentional about how you shop for your food. More fruits and vegetables and more lean meat rather than buying the more, what you call it, fatty meat. Right, now we come to what we can do in Neolife to help us maintain health and why we can trust our supplements in Neolife. It's a company that's been around since 1958. And one of the ethos is that it's the finest whole food source nutrition. All our supplements are made from whole food. Supported, or rather standing out, is our flagship product, 3NN, which has never been equaled and probably won't be because it's unique to Neolife. This is how the food pyramid is supposed to look in a pictorial form. And at the bottom is your whole wheat grains, and then fruits and vegetables, and then protein, and at the top, fats and sugars. Put in another form, that's the Neolife Wellness Pyramid. Supposed to have physical activity, weight management as a foundation of wellness. Next is the whole grains, and then after that is fruits and vegetables, proteins, and then fats and sugars at the tip of the pyramid, in other words, smaller quantities. But what have we done instead? This is what it looks like in real life. Because of the increased, speed of life and running around, we have very little physical activity, and weight management is put on the back burner. We don't eat that many whole grains because of the food processing and food storage, because whole grains don't keep very well. So you have to be very intentional in how to find these. Otherwise, the majority is processed out. And that's why 3NN is very important. Fruits and vegetables, again, not eaten as much as we should. And Neolife has got an answer there that can plug that gap, and that's your carotenoids. Proteins, yes, we do have proteins, but then usually they're accompanied by a lot of fat as well. And we eat them with a lot of carbohydrates, so we negate the effect that we get. And some of the protein is not that good quality, so you don't get the full 22 amino acids. Neolife has got one that gives you that. And what do we consume? Because of convenience, fats and sugars are at the top of the pyramid, and hence our ill health and not being able to maintain our weight. This is a statement that was made a while back, that you are what you eat, and the reality is that 75% of all chronic diseases are preventable. If you look very carefully here, the glass of beer with the boys every evening, that's what happens, fast food, chips, etc. And that is the general body habitat that comes from that kind of fast food. This is, on the other hand, a more trim person with fruits and vegetables at the core of their nutrition. So I'd mentioned TreeNN, how it works. You've had that said many times. It feeds your cells. And how it does it do that? By improving the cell membrane. Therefore, nutrients can go in and waste can get out easily. Without it, without TreeNN, even the other supplements that you're going to take are not going to be as effective. So whenever you're advising a nutritional program for anybody, start with TreeNN as a foundation. And then, of course, the other core nutrition that I mentioned was the shake, which supplies all the 22 amino acids, and it comes in 3 variants. There's a vanilla, there's a chocolate, and strawberry. And then Pro Vitality, which I sort of like spell out in the next slide, contains TreeNN in it, whole grain, fish oil, salmon omega-3, fruits and vegetables carotenoid complex, and multimineral. So these ones form the basis, the foundation of our nutrition. If you take that, you've got a whole meal in itself. Then for men specifically, prostate health, zinc is a very important mineral. And zinc also helps with fertility and healing of any ulcers and things that might be around. So I mentioned that as a particular one because for men, you must have zinc in your formulary or in your supplement program. Vitamin E, I mentioned cardiovascular earlier on as a challenge as we grow as men. And vitamin E helps to improve the health of your blood vessels, as well as reducing oxidation as well. My favorite as far as stress is concerned, this I call stress management in a bottle. 100 mils of this will help calm you down. And the biggest bonus for me was years ago, I used to have a challenge with ulcers. This is one of the products that helped to heal it, as well as the zinc, of course. Masculine Herbal is not in every market, but in East Africa. So those of us who've got ties to East Africa and Namibia, we normally import it directly from there. It's excellent for maintaining male vitality, not only just in, as you can imagine, functioning, etc., but the mind as well, the mood, and it helps you to function as a man, as well as thinking and be able to what you call balance your hormones. This I put up because you might say, what's cleaning got to do with men? Everything, my friends, everything. If their home is not detoxed, whatever I talked about earlier on, the supplements are not going to be very useful. So this is the core cleaning. As I mentioned, core nutrition. This is the core cleaning, which helps to detoxify the home and therefore allow you to maintain health. In addition to that, the detox program, every so often, remember that the liver takes a pounding. The liver is the one that does the detox in the body, and every so often it needs help. This is a detox program put up by Neolife. It's not very onerous in that it's only a 3-day program, which you can do as often as you want. I recommend it highly. So look out for it, and I'm sure some of the things may not be on every market, like for example, acidophilus, but there are alternatives. And you can make contact with people with markets that have it and get it sent to you. I put up Botanical Balance. It came later on the blog, but it helps with the balancing of sugar. I remember I mentioned diabetes earlier on. This is very useful for helping to balance sugar the natural herbal way. Now, remember, if somebody is diabetic, don't take them off their diabetic medication. Let them start the program, and then as they get better, the insulin requirements will decrease, and eventually their attending physician will be able to take them off medication. And then magnesium, in conjunction with aloe vera and CalMag, is good for helping to ease the stress levels that we have. I've not put up a slide of phytodefense specifically, but that is one that helps us to curb the effects that might lead to cancers. And so with that, I'm going to hand you back to the hostess, and thank you very much for your attention. Remember, Men's Month is over, but not quite. We still continue to have Men's Year. All the best. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Thank you very, very much. I hope everybody enjoyed that as much as I did. And thank you, Dr. Nambasi. Also, I like to call him my backbone because he keeps me standing up straight and strong to build this business. Thank you for this excellent presentation. And all of you who are asking for a recording, yes, I usually do record. But now I'm going to open it up for discussion, and I prefer to stop the recording so that it doesn't carry on too long. So thank you.